Well, you have a few weeks to check it out at the Chicago Cultural Center. It's an installation that will hopefully get you to think about the Cook County Jail and the impact it has on its neighbor. The jail is located right in the growing Little Village community, and artist Maria Gaspar grew up very aware of the Cook County Jail. She's here joining us now to tell us a little bit more about how that shaped some of her work that we see today. So we're going to get to that in a second, but first, thank you for coming in today. I'm so excited to talk to you because you have just so much wonderful work that you've put out there.
Thank you.
Just a wonderful career. I want to begin with where you're from because, as I mentioned, you're from Little Village. So talk about your upbringing and what the jail represented for your neighborhood.
Sure. So I grew up in La Villita, which is on Chicago's west side. It's home to about 80,000 Mexican immigrant families. And I, as a very young artist, became really interested in public art, became really interested in how architecture and other kind of public spaces impact our behavior. And growing up in Little Village was always a very rich kind of experience. A lot of DIY, community-driven, organizing, fantastic programs and things like this, and I was really influenced by that. I became interested in thinking about what it would mean to do an art project at the largest single-site jail in the country when I began working with a lot of young people in my neighborhood, and we began to really think about how the largest architecture of our neighborhood is a jail and what that means to us. I visited the Cook County Jail when I was about 12 years old, and I was a part of a Scared Straight program. Okay. So I got to know the jail in a very different way at a very young age. And since then, I've been working inside and outside of the jail doing arts organizing and programming.
Okay, and we'll touch on that as well, but I think it's important to see part of this installation. I had a chance to go out to the Chicago Cultural Center, which is where it's at this point, and we shot some B-roll, some video of it, and there you see it. I think the most stunning part is when you realize the scale, the size of that wall where that jail is. Explain to people why that's important that you get that across.
Sure. I think oftentimes people think about incarceration as something that is completely disconnected from them. But when one realizes that in the U.S. we are a country that incarcerates about 2.5 million people a year, you realize that it is a very large problem that we often make invisible, or we sort of erase that issue. So for me, as an artist, it's been really important to make visible not just the scale of the detention center, but also its impact. It's very, very brutal, sort of large impact that it has all across this country.
Okay, and specifically in Little Village, what has it meant for that community? Meaning, how does it somewhat shape it? Because, like you said, sometimes it's invisible. It's been there for so long, and it takes up such a large part of that neighborhood that sometimes you just kind of look away, but you know it's there, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that, you know, the jail it's Cook County Jail, so it really impacts the county itself, so beyond Little Village. But I think that there's something very interesting about the relationship between a sort of working class community coexisting with a place of detention. And there are many communities all across this country that are in relationship, in proximity to one another. But for me, it's really meant as a sort of opportunity to really consider the ways that we can really be critical of the sort of system as a whole, and think about the ways in which we can dialogue around how it impacts us, how it's a part of our lives, whether we know it or not, and what we can do about it, how we can better that system, how we can reform that system, and work with our communities to really think of alternatives to dealing with criminal justice.
Okay. The Chicago Architecture Biennial, what is it, and why should people be a part of it or go see it?
Yeah, so the biennial takes place every 2 years in Chicago. It brings together architects, designers, cultural producers from all over the world. I believe this year there's about 80,000, sorry.
Not 80,000,
sorry about
80.
that. There's about 80 contributors. And it really deals with a very interesting aspect of architecture, which is to think beyond just buildings, right? But to think about design, to think about how buildings impact our daily lives. And this year's theme is called "And Other Such Stories," which deals with what other stories are we usually leaving out when we talk about architecture, and how can we use this opportunity through the biennial to talk about issues like race, like issues of economic disparity or social justice issues.
Before I let you go, I want you to talk about what's coming up for you, because you just got involved in another project, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, tell me briefly about that.
So beyond a previous project I began about 8 years ago called 96 Acres Project, and just finishing up a project called Radioactive Stories from Beyond the Wall, I just received a fellowship through the Art for Justice Fund, which is an incredible opportunity to continue my work inside of Cook County Jail. So I'll be developing with detainees a performance for video series, and next year I'll start developing that work, and in hopes to really get it out there by the end of next year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maria
Thank
Gaspar,
you.
a Latina artist right here from the Little Village community. We are very proud. Thank you.